Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome students to lecture 2. We will be talking about design processes for developing successful products today. So, at the end of this lecture you would have learnt how to use a generic product development process and its variants in developing new products. So, you will learn about a generic product development process. I have passed around some handouts on it and also some variants, and you learn how these different process types help in creating new products. Okay. You will also identify key problems and challenges in the discovery phase of the double diamond design process. The double diamond design process is a design process that is developed by the Design Council. It has been quite popular over the last 20 years, and we briefly talked about it in the last lecture. You will also learn how to use the discovery phase of the double diamond design process. So, we will go into depth of the discovery phase, which is the first phase of the 4 phases of the double diamond design process, and you will learn how to identify design opportunities. So, the discovery phase of the double diamond design process involves identifying design opportunities. In fact, in any product development process, design opportunities are the place where you start. So, we will learn how to identify these opportunities that exist to carry out our product development. Okay? And at the end of this lecture, you will also identify key factors which are responsible for developing successful products. So, what is it that makes a product successful? Okay? So, we will learn about these key factors. So, to recap the double diamond design process, the double diamond design process consists of 4 phases. First is the discovery phase, then you have the define phase, and after that we have the develop phase, and finally we have the deliver phase. So, we have 4 phases. So, these 4 phases can be thought of as 2 diamonds. Okay? So, this is the first diamond with discovery and define, and this is the second diamond with the develop and the deliver phases. So, what is happening here? Well, we start with the design challenge. So, let us say the design challenge is to design a rover that will walk on the surface of Mars. Okay? And we then analyze the problem. We go through a phase of discovery. So, in this phase of discovery, we identify the problem. What is the problem that we want to solve? Okay? We research the problem, and having identified and researched the problem, we then come to an understanding of the initial problem. So, we develop a deep understanding of the initial problem. So, we spend a lot of time in the discovery phase. So, double diamond design process recommends you to spend a lot of time in this discovery phase and then defining the problem. So, what does the define problem phase do? Well, it helps us limit and define a clear problem to be solved. So, we are able to define an exact problem that we want to solve. So, we come to a problem definition. So, this problem definition is typically in the form of a point of view statement and some specifications. So, that is one way of coming to a problem definition. That is, we have a clear problem definition that we want to solve, and then we have some specifications that we want to achieve. So, once we have done that, so we finish the first diamond of the double diamond, then we go into developing our concepts. So, we focus on developing a solution here. So, we have clearly defined the problem, and once we have done that, we then go ahead and focus on developing a solution. So, it is in this phase that you develop concepts. So, you come up with a lot of concepts where these concepts will solve the original challenge problem. Okay. So, once you have done that, once you have developed these concepts, then what you need to do is you need to select the concepts and then deliver it. So, you select the concepts and you deliver, you test and evaluate, and you ready the concept for production and launch. So, you come up with your final product here. So, that is the double diamond design process. Consists of 2 diamonds, but the key thing to note here is it consists of diverging and converging phases. So, in discovery you are diverging, and then in define you are converging, and then you are diverging again when you are creating lots of different concepts. So, these are the concepts which might solve the original challenge problem. And once you have done that, the next thing to do is to come to a logical outcome, which is the final product that you deliver. Does this make sense? Okay, very good. So, let us dig into a discovery phase, because this is by far the most critical phase where you are trying to understand the problem. Because if you have not understood the problem in the first place, then the solution that you develop may not actually address the original problem. Okay. So, you identify the problem. How do we do that? Well, first you need to start with an initial idea or inspiration. So, the idea or inspiration may come from somebody like, let us say, the President of India, who wants to do something grand. Maybe we want to send a spacecraft to Pluto. Okay. So, that is your initial, that is your source of initial idea or inspiration. Okay. And then what you do is you identify and then define the problem. You need to identify and define the problem. How do you do that? Well, first you need to know what is the problem. The problem is usually a difference between the actual solution and the desired solution. So, we are not yet there in the actual solution, okay, and we are not yet there at the desired solution, but we are in a current situation. And what could be a situation in developing a spaceship that goes to Pluto? Well, the actual situation is that India has never done it, right, and the desired situation is that the spaceship reaches Pluto and takes some photographs, or orbits Pluto and does some scientific observations. Okay. So, there is a gap between the actual situation and the desired situation, and that is our problem. Okay. So, what do you need to start with? Well, you start with something which is a user need that you really care about and are interested in solving. So, there is a need that you want to address, okay, and to address that need, you want to find a solution. Okay. So, it is critical to understand these user needs. So, once you understand these user needs which you really care about, which you want to solve, then you can go about solving it. Okay. So, identifying the needs is critical to defining the problem. Also, you need to observe where these interesting problems are in. So, where is it that this problem lies in? So, for instance, sending a spaceship to Pluto means operating in the solar system, right. So, you need to understand the dynamics of the solar system, and only then you can go about solving it. And also you need to find inspiration by questioning why things are done the way they are. So, why is it that we take certain orbital maneuvers? Why is it that all these planets are going around the sun? So, understanding that, questioning those, so that will help you define the problem. Okay. Also, you need to think, you need to ask, how would you break down the challenges into smaller manageable key elements that you want to address. So, it is a big task to send a spaceship that goes all the way to Pluto. So, how do you go about doing it? Okay. So, let us say you are the mission coordinator, how do you do it? Okay. What kind of teams you need to assemble? What are the sub problems that those teams, the sub teams will address? Okay. So, thinking about that. Okay. So, breaking down a big challenge into smaller elements helps you also identify the problem more clearly. Everyone follows how you go about identifying the problem? So, it is really important to understand what the user needs. So, only when you understand what the user needs, that you can come to a reasonable understanding of your initial problem. So, how do we go about doing that? So, identifying the needs and wants of the end user is important because we want to formulate our design problem very carefully. And how do we do that? So, you can do that through observations. So, you can make observations of the real world, what problems are the users facing. You can carry out interviews with the user or user group. So, you can bring users for a session where you interview them, ask them what do they need. You can also carry out research into the limitations or conditions that your users may face. For instance, users may be suffering from some conditions that may affect their ability to use a certain product. So, let us say you are going to design a mouse, okay, a computer mouse, and that computer mouse which you may think is the correct design may not be right for somebody with arthritis. Okay. So, you want to know how that person feels when he uses the particular shape that you are thinking of, or the current mouses that are available in the market. So, researching into the limitations of current products or the conditions that the users may be facing will help you identify the needs of the users. What is it the user needs from the product that you are trying to develop or the problem that you are trying to solve. Okay. So, this user here, you can see, because of arthritis is not able to grasp objects easily. So, if you develop a product that is for this user, then you would want to interview this user and find out what are the specific angles, etc., which might be comfortable for them, right. So, identifying needs helps identify any limitations to the ideas that you may have. Okay, you may have some ideas, but those ideas may be right for some users, but they may not be right for other users. So, you will be able to identify what are those limitations and also to help with the initial design ideas. So, once you identify the needs, then you will be able to get help with your initial design ideas. So, they will so those needs will start formulating the ideas in your head. Okay. The other thing you need to do is analyze the market research and user feedback. Okay. So, you may carry out some research in the market, and that may be through websites, that may be through scholarly articles, through magazines, etc. So, if you carry out market research, that will also help you identify the needs. So, two things, market research and user feedback, these two things will help you make changes to the original brief. So, original brief may come from somebody who needs the product, but by carrying out a user research and a market research, you will be able to come to some changes to that brief, and these changes may be in terms of time scale and budget. So, for instance, you may be given a target of making the spacecraft to Pluto with a budget of, let us say, 100 crores of Indian rupees. But after analyzing the current solutions that have been put forth by other space agencies, let us say NASA or ESA, you may come to a conclusion that no, this is not possible to do it with 100 crores of Indian rupees. We need more funding, right? Or you may have been told that you want to do it you have to do it in 2 years, and you may find out that you do not have the time to assemble together a team and bring forth all of the materials, etc., that are needed to deliver to this time scale. Okay. Make sense? So, once you have done that, then you need to incorporate the results of the feedback, the testing and product analysis, all of that to adapt, test and evaluate and improve the product. Okay. So, all of this feedback that you are getting, all of the information that you are getting from the user research and the market research, then will be a good starting point to adapt, test, evaluate and improve the product. So, it is critical to note that the design process is iterative, that is, it goes around in loops. So, you may come up with some concepts and you may create a prototype, but that prototype may not function as you want it to. So, you need to iterate through. So, one of the mistakes that some design teams do is that they forget that the design process is iterative, that it requires you to refine and refine until you get to that product that you really want to launch in the market. The other thing you need to keep in mind when you are talking about thinking about user needs is whether all design is aimed at selling the most products. So, consider this calculator here. So, what is special about this calculator? What do you see? It is showing the time, yes. 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 So, but what is special about the? Yes. So, these numbers are quite large, right? So, they are for somebody with special needs. Okay. So, this particular design is not aimed at selling the most products. Again, this shoe here What do you think about this? Yes, well, this is a kid, right? So this is a shoe that is made for only kids. Okay, so it is not aimed at selling the most products. So it is limited by a age group. So designing fastenings for small children to use, or creating products for the partially sighted, somebody who is visually impaired. So they may need some bright colors or large buttons. So these buttons are quite large and they are useful for somebody who is less eyesight. Okay. So all design is not aimed at selling the most products. So when you are creating a design, you need to think about which market segment or who are the people that you are targeting. And it is not always that you create designs to make profit. Okay. So some designs are aimed to satisfy a specific segment, sometimes even one user. So you may, for instance, take the ergonomic data of a wheelchair user and redesign products. Okay, so you take the data of a single wheelchair user and redesign the wheelchair for that one person. So that is not design aimed at selling the most products, right? So that is design that is aimed at a single wheelchair user. So throughout the iterative design process, designers will need to constantly refer back to the user needs and the design problem to ensure that they are on track. So you want to constantly iterate through so that you ensure that you are on track to solve the challenge. So some questions that you may ask about existing products to define your design problem. So you may ask the question, well, who are the competitors and what products do they already sell? Okay. So if you are trying to create a new smartphone, well, who are my competitors? It would be Apple, it would be Samsung, Sony, Motorola, etc. Okay. So who are the competitors and what products do they already sell? What varieties of smartphones do they sell? And accordingly, how can I define my problem? So you may want to ask the question, what are the current trends? So maybe the current trend is to create these flip phones. Okay. So you want to ask the question, what are the current trends? You want to be asking the questions, what are the price variations? What are the price variations in these phones and are they value for money? Okay. So are they 1 lakh rupees? Are they 500 rupees, 5,000 rupees? Okay. So you want to be understanding the price variations and whether the current products are really value for money. Do the customers think that they are getting value for the money they are paying for that product? So few years ago, you never had smartphone, you never had phones that costed in the tens of thousands of rupees. You had phones that were very cheap. But now you find products that are smartphones that are really expensive, right? But people are buying them. Why are they buying them? Because they are getting more variations, more features. So the price variations are related to the money. Okay, so you want to be asking the question, well, where do I want to position myself in the current market? So maybe the cheapest smartphone is 1000 rupees and the most expensive smartphone is 5 lakh rupees. Okay, so where do I position it in this range? Okay, so think about that. The next question that you want to be asking is, well, which products are good and which are bad? Okay, which products are good and which are bad? So in the market, there are many products and they will have varying degrees of quality. So you want to be asking the question, well, which ones are good and which ones are bad, and what could be done to make a new product different and better? So if you are trying to develop a new product, well, what can I do so that this product will be different from other products? How can I position my product so that it has a unique selling point? Okay. You want to be asking the question, well, what are the responses from the customer reviews? So you can go on Amazon, or you can go on eBay, or you can collect data from customers and you can find out, well, what are the customers saying about the current products. So let's say you are part of a company where there are already products in line and you have been asked to develop a new product. Okay. So then what you can do, you can also look at the customer reviews of the line of products that you already have. So that will give you some ideas about defining the problem that you want to solve. Because the customers will tell you these are the faults with the product. These are the things that we want to improve in the product. And when you listen to that, when you see that review or comment, then and you respond to that, that's when you can come up with a clear problem definition. Okay. So, there are other questions that you can ask as well. So, you can ask, well, what other products could influence this prototype? So, let us say I am developing a new smartphone. Are there other electronics products that I can get my ideas from? Okay. Or are there any other product family types from where I can borrow some ideas and incorporate in a smartphone? So, what other products could you take inspiration from? So, designers may take inspiration from the mechanisms of one product and introduce it into the product that they are designing. So, for instance, our friend here, he is designing some kind of a novel robot, but he is getting his idea from the journal Mechanisms and Machines, where they have developed some other mechanism, and then he is translating that idea to his own product type, right. So, you can take inspiration from the mechanisms of one product and introduce it into the product that you are designing. The other question that you can ask is, well, what materials, components and fixings have been used? So, what are the materials that have been used, okay, in past products? Can I do some improvement in the materials? Can I change some of the components? Can I change some of the fixings? Okay. So, to do that, what you can do is you can carry out a product disassembly. Okay. So, you can disassemble a product and you can find out what is there in the product. So, a good way of creating new products is to take a product and open it up and see what are the components in it. Okay. So, once you do a disassembly, you know all of the components, and then you can assign some functions to each component, and then you can figure out how this whole product works. So, that is a good starting point. So, this is a light emitting diode. I think on this, at this point, we can take a IoT break time and see how an IoT product works. Okay. So, what I am going to do now is going to illustrate an IoT device. Okay. So, let us closely look at this device. Everyone can see this. Okay. So, this is a breadboard. On this breadboard, there is a board that I placed. It is a microcontroller board, and this is a ESP32 microcontroller board. So, it is a low cost microcontroller board. What does it have in it? Well, it has it is enabled with Wi-Fi. So, there is a symbol here, there is an antenna here which lets it connect to any Wi-Fi network. Okay. So, it is a low cost Wi-Fi microcontroller board. Okay. And on this breadboard, you can also see two LEDs. One is green in color and the other is red in color. You can also see two resistors. So, what I have done is I have set up a circuit here. So, where this board is drawing power from a power source, okay, and it has two resistors and two LEDs, okay, which are connected to the pins of this microcontroller board. Okay. So, it is connected to my smartphone. So, on my smartphone, I am connected to the cellular network, and I am running a Wi-Fi hotspot. Okay. And I have created a little portal, it is called Amar's IoT portal. Okay. And I can just press on this button here, and you can see that this green LED has lit up. Okay. So, I am able to control these LEDs from my smartphone, and that is the point. So, I press on the second button and the red LED glows. Okay. So, I press on the second button and the red LED glows, and it says that the state of the red LED is on. So, it says red state on and green state on. I can click again on the green and it goes to green state off, and now you can see that the LED is off. Okay. And then I can click on the red and this also goes to off. Okay. So, everyone understands how this works. So, in addition to that, I have kept here some components which are useful to create these sorts of circuit, so that you can understand how to create such circuit. So, the first component I have here is a soldering iron. Okay. So, why is it needed? Any thoughts?
Connect the wires with the board.
So, this is the soldering iron. Okay. So, this soldering iron is required to solder the pins, solder a set of pins onto this microcontroller board. Okay. So, this microcontroller board here has a number of pins, and you need to solder these pins. Okay. Only then can you access the pins of this board. Okay. So, you need to carry out really fine soldering of each one of these pins, and once you have done that, then you can place it on a breadboard and you can access the individual pins on this microcontroller board. Okay. So, in addition, I have a breadboard. So, this is a breadboard. Okay. This is a cable that connects from the USB to the micro USB port of this microcontroller board. Okay. So, this is another type of microcontroller board. So, the reason we are able to create these sorts of IoT devices is that these boards are quite cheap nowadays, and there is Wi-Fi everywhere. And because there is Wi-Fi everywhere, we are able to connect normal day to day objects to the internet. Okay. So, this here is a dot matrix array unit. Okay. What is it used for? Well, last class we saw that the current time can be printed using such an array of such display units. So, this is the MAX 7219 display unit, and you can join such units to create an array, and you can display different letters and you can display time, etc. In addition, I have a number of sensors. This is temperature and humidity sensor. So, it will sense the temperature in the environment and the humidity in the environment, and then you can transmit that data over Wi-Fi and see it on your smartphone or any other device. This here is a motion detection sensor. Okay. So, it uses infrared wavelength to determine if there is motion in front of it or not. Okay. This here is an ultrasonic sensor. Okay. In addition, I have some resistors, I have got an LED, I have got some connectors and some connecting wires. So, as you can see, the equipment that is required or the components that are required to create an IoT product are quite simple and straightforward. All you need to know is that these components can be used to create such a product, and then you need to put it together, and then you need to write some code which you can upload onto this board, and once you have uploaded that code onto this board, then it will start doing what is written in that code, which is usually connecting to the Wi-Fi network and then transmitting the data that it is getting from the different sensors that are connected to that board. So, you can have any number of sensors connected to such boards, and you can collect all sorts of data from real life objects. So, as a result, what we are doing is we are able to connect different real life objects, and we are sort of giving them life. We are sensing different attributes, different physical attributes from each product. Okay. And for instance, it could be force, it could be temperature, it could be the humidity in the room, it could be the RPM of the rotation of a fan. Okay. We are collecting this information and we are transmitting over the internet, and then we are accessing it wherever we wish to. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Good. So hopefully that makes you interested in the Internet of Things. So as I just shared, so there were two LEDs, and these LEDs are connected to pins 26 and pin 27 of this ESP32 microcontroller board. And then you have two resistors which are connected to ground, okay, and this ground is connected to the ground of this board. So you have two LEDs connected to the microcontroller board, and then you have two resistors, so that the current that's passing through these LEDs is not high, otherwise these LEDs may burn. So having done that, now I can access these two LEDs from a smartphone, and I can turn their states on and off. So having seen this, what products do you think can be based off this example? So now let's talk about how we can get influenced into designing new products. So we can get influenced by looking beyond, wider than the direct competitors. So if you are a smartphone manufacturer, so you want to sometimes look outside other smartphone manufacturers. You may want to go and look in some other domain, okay, and see if you can grab some ideas from there to incorporate in your own product. Okay. So past and present designers and design companies are known for a particular style or approach to design. So you can also develop your own style of designing, okay, so for which you get known. So a key part of the discovery process is identifying what are the opportunities that exist, okay. So you need to identify what are the opportunities. You have identified the user needs, okay, but you also need to identify, well, what are the opportunities that exist. So what is an opportunity? Well, opportunity is an idea for a new product, okay. So let's say you have seen this example of this IoT device working, and that may give you some ideas for a new product which you may design as part of your practical project, okay. So opportunity is a product description in an embryonic form. So in a sort of a nascent form, which is still in the form of an embryo, okay. So very early idea. So it is a product description in an embryonic form, a newly sensed need, a newly discovered technology, or a rough match between a need and a possible solution. So that is your opportunity, okay. So there is some newly sensed need or new technology, or maybe there is just a description in a very raw embryonic form that you want to develop further and create a real product out of it, okay. What you are seeing here is nothing but a product which is for cats, okay. So this is known as a Frolly cat, okay. So it is shining a laser through, and this cat is following where this laser beam lands, just like my laser pointer, and so it is a toy for a cat. So when you are away from home, you may turn this on, and the cat will remain busy and will not be bored, because this dot will move around, and cats, as you know, like to chase a target, prey, okay. So cat will get interested and probably play with it, okay. So it will keep it amused. So at the earliest stage of development, there is some uncertainty. Your idea is in an embryonic form. You don't know where you can take it, okay. So there is a lot of uncertainty, and then you go through further development to create the product. So in the discovery phase, there is a lot of uncertainty. So you don't know where you'll end up, okay. You have just seen, oh, there is a new technology that has come up. You have seen it on TV, or you have read it in a new journal like Science or Nature. So it creates some ideas in your head. You write it down, but you don't know where it will end up. There is a lot of uncertainty, and you want to develop and take it further, but you don't know where it will end up, okay. So opportunity is nothing but the hypothesis about how you might create value out of that idea. So you've seen some new technology, okay. You have seen this IoT device here, and then you are thinking, oh, I could do this, I could do that, okay. So, and you write it down on a piece of paper. So, it is a hypothesis about how you might end up with something that is valuable to other people, okay. So, you come up with the hypothesis about how value might be created. So, examples of opportunities are plenty, okay. For a consumer products company like Procter and Gamble, an opportunity might be a new type of cleaner that is suggested by a customer, okay. That is what P&G do. So, if they think, if a customer says, oh, I want a cleaning product that does this and that, okay. So, maybe if there is a splash of paint, I want it to be gone in just one round of cleaning. So, maybe that is what the customer suggests. So, Procter and Gamble can go and research into that problem definition and then explore it further. So, for a materials company, it might be a new polymer with unusual properties. So, it is about understanding the domain in which you are working. So, what maybe you will join some company or you are working in a research establishment, what is it that is needed there, and then sensing the opportunities around the products that are there or around the product lines that are there, and then creating value out of it. So, some opportunities ultimately become new products, while others warrant substantial further development, okay. So, you sense an opportunity and maybe 10 ideas come to your mind, and out of those 10 ideas only one makes it to the market, okay. Some become final products and others do not. So, what are the current global design trends in terms of opportunities? Well, there is a lot of work going on in design for equality, okay. So, how can we ensure that we do not have such inequality, people living in slums and people living in these skyscrapers comfortably, okay. So, that is design for equality. So, how can we bring these people up? Can we create some low cost homes for these people so that they do not have to live in slums? Or can we think of low cost skyscrapers where they can move into? Well, that is what is happening in China, okay. So, design for equality is a big global trend. Design for large populations is also a global trend, where especially relevant for India. Design with big data is also a big global trend, okay. So, big data is all of the data that is emerging from different products that are being sold everywhere, okay. So, a company like Procter and Gamble may get a lot of data about which of its products in its product line are popular, which are not, which are getting sold, not getting sold, which areas of the country are preferring a particular type of product. So, that is a sort of learning that you can get from big data, and that is also what we will be covering in the later lectures in this course, okay. Anybody recognize this face? Yes, who is she? Correct. So, design for sustainability is a big trend. So, there is a lot of money in green energy, there is a lot of money in green tech, okay. So, design for sustainability is also a big global trend. Educational design, 25 years ago you did not have virtual learning environments, you did not have learning management systems. So, all of that has changed today, right. So, this course is available on Hello IITK, right. So, educational design is another big global trend. Connected design, which is smart devices, which is what we will be covering a lot in this course. So, this for instance is a connected device, okay. So, connected design is a big global trend. Design for health is a big global trend. This state Uttar Pradesh ranks one of the lowest in the NITI Aayog's health index, okay. It is in the bottom 3. So, in Uttar Pradesh, design for health is a big thing because the density of population here is high. How do we cater to so many people looking for doctors, so many people looking for surgery, so many people looking for so many different exceptional medical conditions, right. So, this is a big topic. Another big topic is inclusive design. How can we design our roads, our pavements, our devices, gadgets, etc., so that people who are physically disadvantaged, they can be included, okay. So, inclusive design is also a big global trend. So, each one of these that I have shown here is an opportunity that you can work on. It depends on your interest. One of you may be interested in this, large populations. I want to solve the problem which our country faces. Another one of you may be interested in data. I like to write code and analyze data. So, you can design with big data. Okay. So, these are some of the areas where there are lots of opportunities. So, again these opportunities can be broken down into different types. So, a good way of classifying these opportunities is into horizon 1 opportunities, horizon 2 opportunities and horizon 3 opportunities. So, what are these? Well, you can map them against two different axes. So, this axis here is showing the knowledge of need and this axis is showing the knowledge of solution. Okay. So, here is the user and the market, here is the method and the process and the technology. Okay. So, this is where the market is, this is where the current science is, this is what we can do. Okay. So, as we go along this axis, we are talking about more and more sophisticated methods, more and more sophisticated process, more and more sophisticated technologies. So, horizon 1 opportunities is taking into account the current methods that we have. What are the current let us say manufacturing processes we have, what are the current technologies that we have. Okay. Using that to create some products is horizon 1 opportunities. So, that is usually improvements, extensions, variants, cost reductions. So, for instance, going from iPhone 14 to 15, it is a small improvement, right. So, that is horizon 1 opportunity. Okay. So, improvements, extensions, variants and cost reductions. The second type of opportunity is horizon 2 opportunities. Okay. So, that is looking at markets that we are not addressing. So, people that we are not currently reaching out to, and also there is a solution that is available, but we are not using it in the company, for instance. Okay. So, that is horizon 2 opportunities. So, next generation of products and services are for core markets. So, for instance, IoT, it is still quite new, right. So, connecting different things together, it is still quite new. So, it is an existing solution, the method exists, but it is about using it. Okay. So, that can possibly be classified as a horizon 2 opportunity. So, horizon 3 is really blue sky, which is where we are exploring new solutions and approaches and we are moving also into new markets. Okay. So, exploration into new markets and new category products and services. Everyone understands the types of opportunities, horizon 1, horizon 2 and horizon 3. So, how do you go about identifying the opportunities? So, to identify the opportunities, what you can do is use a tournament structure. Everyone understands round robin? Round robin, yeah. So, where each participant plays against all the other participants. Okay. So, you can create some kind of a tournament. Okay. So, where you start with 64 different ideas, bring them down to 32, then 16 and so on and so forth. So, that is the tournament structure. You you narrow down the ideas, bring them down a funnel and then create your final product. So, this is a tournament structure. So, where you are using the idea of a tournament, where you are comparing one against the other. So, let us say you have 64 brilliant ideas and they may not come all from you, you are working in a team, maybe it is a global team, there are hundreds of players and hundreds of stakeholders and they bring in 64 different ideas for a new product. Okay. And these ideas, then the team needs to grapple with them, discuss them, challenge each other and then from those 64 you come down to 32. Then you find some flaws with those among those 32, weigh them against each other, maybe use some attribute scoring technique and then you come up with 16. So, this is a tournament structure of identifying, well, what is the new opportunity that I want to move into. Okay. So, maybe there are 64 different opportunities, maybe you go to science and pick up the journal science from the last 2 years and you see maybe 100 papers and each paper can be considered as an opportunity, right. And then you weigh up each against the other. Maybe you reject some of the opportunities because you simply do not have the resources to work on it. You do not have the manufacturing process or you do not have the skills, know-how, etc. So, you trim them down until you are left with 1 or 2 really good opportunities that you know you can move into. Okay. For instance, today I have explained to you all the different components of creating an IoT product. So, you now understand it. You also understand that it is a low cost thing. It does not cost a lot of money to create one. Okay. So, that is the line that you can go down. So, you can narrow down using, before you came to a class, you did not know how to create an IoT product maybe. You did not know what are the components that will be needed. Now, you know. Now, you can see with your own eyes, and that maybe creates some ideas in your head that you can do it. Okay. So, that is how you trim down your opportunities to number of opportunities that you can handle. Okay. So, this Frolicat example is a real example of the company which developed this Frolicat product, which is a toy for cats, and you can see how they created so many different ideas for toys for cats. So, maybe the cat is playing with some smart digital screen which has things moving on it, and then because things are moving, the cat likes it and is playing with it, and then they must have thought, oh, it will be too high for the cat to reach. So, then it is not there in the final design. Okay. So, many different ideas, some robot dropping a ball. Okay. So, that could be an idea for a toy for a cat. Somebody throwing a ball and the cat chasing it. So, these sorts of ideas are the different 7 opportunities, and these 7 opportunities, as you can see, have been represented with sketches. But before that, there were even more. There were 50 raw opportunities which were maybe written down on a piece of paper, 50 ideas on a piece of paper. From them, you have chosen 7 for which you have drawn sketches, and from those 7, you have come up with 3 opportunities with exploratory prototypes and sample packaging. Okay. So, you create some prototype, you find that out of this 7, 3 are worth chasing, which you can make with the resources that are there in your company, and then you make prototypes for it, and then based on those prototypes you come up with an opportunity articulated as a mission statement. So, you come up with a mission statement for your product development team. Does this make sense? Okay. So, this is actually sold on the online store Argos as pet safe Frolicat Bolt automatic laser light. So, you can actually go on the online store Argos and you can look this up and you will find this product. So, can we actually talk about a systematic structure of opportunity identification? Answer is yes. So, you start with establishing a charter that maybe you want to make a spaceship that goes to Pluto. So, and write down a few things about it. So, create a charter, then you generate and sense many opportunities. Okay. Okay. So, maybe the opportunities are using a nuclear power source to make a spaceship that goes to Pluto. Maybe another is using chemical energy. Okay. So, generate and sense many opportunities. Maybe you want to send a spaceship when Pluto is in a certain position in its orbit. Okay. So, generate and sense these opportunities, then you want to screen the opportunities. Okay. You want to take these opportunities and then you want to screen them. Oh, these are completely ridiculous ideas, I can't do them at all, and these are the ones I can do. You screen them. Then the ones that are looking promising, you develop them further. You create sketches, create 3D CAD models, etc. You develop them. Then you want to select the exceptional opportunities. So, out of all of those opportunities, you want to select the ones that are really exceptional. So, not just promising, but exceptional. And finally, you want to reflect on the results. So, let us say you have gone through the whole process and you come up with one final opportunity that you want to explore further. So, you want to then sit down with your team and reflect on the results. Did we come to a right conclusion or not, and the process that we used. Okay. So, in this identification process or the discovery process in the double diamond design process, there are a number of constraints that you need to keep in mind. So, these are the constraints which are also helping you narrow down your opportunities. Okay. So, what are these constraints? These constraints could be physical constraints such as overall geometry. So, size, width, space, general arrangement. Could be forces that are involved in creating a product. So, which parts will be moving, strength, rigidity and fixtures. Okay. You might be constrained by electricity, batteries, electronics, usage and the environmental impact. and you might be constrained by the materials and the controls, the functionality, the mechanics, reactions, the operations in use, the user interfaces and the disposal. So, these are some of the physical constraints that you may have to think about. Okay. So, if you are developing a toy for a cat, it can't be as big as this room, right. So, there will be certain size, width and space and general arrangement that you need to think about. You need to think about the forces in your product, maybe the power, maybe the materials and controls. So, these are physical constraints, but also you might have some non-physical constraints. So, for instance, you might have some costs. So, you might have been given a brief that make a new product that is within 10 lakhs of Indian rupees. So, project budgets, material constraints. Okay. So, maybe there are some special materials that will help you take your idea further, but those are not available locally. Think about the labor that you will need. Okay. So, to create that product, you might need some specialized labor, people who are trained in doing certain things. So, can you get that? Maybe you have a certain workforce and you cannot extend that. So, in terms of that, so that then becomes a constraint. What are the costs for design? Okay. How long will this process take to create this design, and what are the costs in manufacturing it? Okay. So, again you may also be constrained by your market research. So, the market research may tell you about, well, we can reach only 10,000 people or 100,000 people or 1 lakh people. What is the segmentation? What types of people are going to want to buy your product, okay? And what segment is likely to buy your product, understanding that. Understanding the competition, okay, you may be restricted by competition, maybe there is somebody who is a dominant player, has a monopoly on that type of product, okay. Can you overcome that competition? And only then you go into that opportunity. If you sense that, okay, this new smartphone is not going to be competitive with Apple or Samsung or Sony or any of the current players, you may not want to go into exploring that opportunity further. You want to be thinking about aesthetics, okay. So, is my product going to be appealing so that people will want to buy it, okay. And what is the technology that is available with me that I can use, okay. So, maybe you are restricted by the technology that you have access to. The other design constraint that you may have is user research, okay. So, users may tell you about certain needs which may create a unique selling point, okay, that may then create a constraint, okay. So, you want to be to defining your product to that selling point, or users may have certain requirements that they want to be able to ride a certain bike on a certain mountain, okay. So, those are then your requirements that constrain you in identifying what product you will make. The layout may be a constraint. So, maybe you are making a laptop, but there are so many different subsystems within it. So, the layout of one affects the layout of the other. Okay. So, we will discuss all of this with examples in the coming lectures. So, this is just to get you thinking. Also, how will the users interact with that product? What sort of interaction will they have? For instance, I am using this laser pointer. How am I interacting with it? Pressing buttons, right. So, it is designed in such a way that I can grip it properly, okay, and I am using these arrow keys to move backward and forward, okay. I am using this button to point the laser, okay. So, these buttons are the way I am interacting with it, okay. If these buttons were slightly lower, I would have to move my thumb down further, okay. So, that would be bad design. So, how is the user going to interact with the product that you create? So, that interaction design is crucial, okay. And also the ergonomics, is it comfortable to use, right. So, I am able to hold it nicely because there is a curve here. So, they have thought about the surfacing of this bit, right. Okay. So, this is the more detailed view of the double diamond, which lays out all of the different things that you will need to do in the different phases. So, here you can see in the discover phase, you want to take this brief and tear it apart, and you want to really explore it in great detail. So, what is the brief? The brief is actually talking about this big problem that you want to solve, which may be to develop a spaceship that goes to Pluto, okay. You want to rip it up, and you want to do enough research through primary research, through secondary research and clustering of topics to come up with some unstructured research findings. So, this is what you should have at the end of the discover phase. So, at the end of the discover phase, you will have unstructured research findings. You started with a challenging client brief, and then you have ended up with these unstructured research findings which you have not put a structure to. And the next phase that you will have is the define phase. In this define phase, and we will talk about this later. So, you start getting insights, you look at themes that are emerging from these research findings, you look at what are the opportunity areas, and also you look at how might we solve the problem using the knowledge that you have got from your unstructured research findings. So, what you end up with is a final brief. So, this was the client brief, but you end up with a final brief which has changes to the original brief. And then once you have got here, then you want to develop your idea further, and that is where you are diverging again. So, you are carrying out ideation and you are carrying out evaluation. You are carrying out ideation and evaluation, and so you are developing your ideas further and you are creating concepts, concept sketches, concept models, etc. And so, you are ending up with a variety of ideas, and then once you have these ideas, then you want to converge again. So, you have a number of ideas here again which are catering to this final brief. So, these ideas, then you want to converge them again, you want to build, test, iterate, and you want to do that several times over until you come up with an answer which is the product solution. Does that make sense? So, the discovery phase can be dissected as this. So, you start with the trigger idea or inspiration, okay, and then you use your interests, your creativity and problem solving approach in carrying out market research, user research, and analyzing existing solutions. So, this is a simplistic way of putting it, okay. So, you carry out market research, user research, and analyze your existing solutions, and that is how you come to the unstructured research findings. So, when you are working in a team, what you want to be doing is, you want to be taking each phase of the double diamond and you want to break down them into tasks. So, let us say it is a 3-member team, then you want to be giving market research to one, maybe user research to another, and analyzing existing solutions to a third person. So, you can unpack these to form subtasks, and if you are working in a bigger team and it is a bigger problem, maybe you can break them down into further subcategories. So, maybe market research online, market research offline, okay. Looking at magazines, somebody will look at magazines, journals, trade reports, etc., and another person can look at all the online sources. So, you can break them down into further subtasks. So, the double diamond, can it backfire? Actually, it is a popular framework for conducting product discovery. It has been caught up a lot in the last 20 years, and it is approved by the British Design Council. So, it encourages product teams to approach problems and solutions by diverging and converging. So, starting broad to enable creative collaboration and then narrowing down to 1 or 2 key areas to focus. It provides a structure for understanding and defining user problems before jumping straight into a solution. Okay. So, it really creates a structure where you can define the user problem. Okay. So, a lot of time in the double diamond process is spent in discovery and defining. Okay. You spend a lot of time there. So, that is the reason it can backfire, that is, product teams can get the pacing wrong. They may spend a lot of time doing discovery and defining. Okay. So, essentially your product team must move slow enough to effectively accomplish the goals of each step and quickly enough that they can out innovate their competition, because the technology is there, you want to exploit it quickly as well. You do not want to be sitting doing discovery for 8 months, 10 months. Okay. So, the moral is, do not go through the process just for the sake of it. So, on this note, we will end this lecture. So, thanks everyone for coming, and what we will do is we will carry on further in the next lecture, and we will understand product development process in more detail. We will look at different types of product development process. So, we will go from a generic process to variants. So, variants will be like spiral product development, complex system development. So, we will look at those. Okay. We will look at how those those processes vary from a generic process, and what are the sorts of products that require a generic process, and what are the sorts of products that require variants. So, we will look at number of different variants of a generic product development process.